Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with jazz saxophonist Chris Greene. He was born and raised in Evanston, Illinois, just outside of Chicago, and still calls it home. He would move on to Bloomington, Indiana to attend the prestigious Indiana University Jazz Studies program and study with renowned professor David Baker. And since 1994, he's been back in the Chcago area, collaborating with the likes of The Temptations, Eric Roberson, Steve Coleman and the Five Elements, Sheena Easton, Michael Manson, Andrew Bird, and so many others. He just released 2017's Boundary Issues with his quartet, and after 11-plus albums, he's feeling pretty good about life. So get to know Chris and dig this interview, my friends.
Thank you for taking some time out to talk with me today, Chris. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. Thank you for listening and liking what you hear. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I'm going to start off, before we get to your latest CD, Boundary Issues, give me an idea of what's been going on with you lately.
A lot, really. Just a lot of unique, I've always prided myself on hopefully being able to fit what I do in any situation, but some really unique opportunities have come my way. I've always tried to be a fairly versatile guy. Just things are really cracking with the CD. The initial response seems to be really good. Been playing a lot with a number of different bands, regional bands, some regional touring. A funk cover band that plays pretty regularly. There's a hip hop project that I've been working with for the past 8 years called the J. Davis Trio, and they're getting ready to release a new CD pretty soon, and just various sideman things, and things have been surprisingly good.
So let's talk about this new CD, Boundary Issues. Talk to me about what went into this album and how you really feel about it. It seems like it has a really good, tight sound to it, and you guys feel good making it.
Well, I'm lucky in that I've been with the same band pretty much since 2000. Same group of guys since 2005. I mean, the newest member is Steve, the drummer, and he joined in 2011. So he's been with us for 6 years now. So that goes a long way towards the tight sound and just the musical rapport that we have. I mean, I wanted, when I started the band, I specifically wanted to have a band that I could develop some music with, and develop a sound, and develop rapport and chemistry, and cool musical in jokes that would hopefully translate into real cool music. Not so cool and not so much of a hit in joke that it either flies over the audience's head or is alienating, but just a kind of a palpable chemistry that bands in all genres that we love got to develop over the years, like the Mingus Band, the Ellington bands, the Monk Quartets, even like Prince's bands or the Beatles or the Rolling Stones, just bands that have pretty much, on one hand, have been are together and developing music and developing a sound, but because of the nature of hopefully we all are trying to improve ourselves individually, and so when we come back together to play, everybody stepped the game up in terms of the writing, in terms of playing and execution, and just everybody's about listening to each other and just really no one's trying to show off how much of a badass virtuoso there are. Everyone's committed to making the band sound good.
Right on. Well, we just kind of, at the top of the hour, we touched on where you're living at in Evanston. You grew up there. Talk to me about your childhood and how you got so interested in jazz.
Well, I started playing saxophone at 10, and pretty much by the nature of playing saxophone, if you're halfway decent, you get asked, but you play concert band and all, and marching band and all that stuff, but by nature of saxophone being a jazz instrument, you get asked to be in the jazz band. And so I was always interested in it, and I always liked to play. I think I was pretty good. I had a fair amount of natural talent. A little lazy, but the work ethic and just the love of jazz didn't really kick in until I heard think until I heard My Favorite Things by Coltrane. Before that, I liked it. I played in jazz band, and I improvise the little tiny bit of skills that I had at the time. But I probably had more nerve, but I was at least trying to play. But pretty much, everything that I was rooted in was hip hop and pop and R&B that was kind of prevalent in the late '80s or early '90s, and then the stuff that I heard at home, like Motown and James Brown, that my parents would play around the house. So I was always interested in that, and so I just never really clicked on me that being a jazz musician until I heard Coltrane, and then once I kind of heard that, I got obsessed and listened to everything, listened to all the recordings I could, and just read everything I could read about him, and just tried to find as many documentaries as I could about him. Just got completely obsessed, and it must have worked because I auditioned to be in. I auditioned to go when I was trying to go to college. I auditioned for Indiana University, David Baker, and I immediately got in. So there was that. And so pretty much after that, I was on my way.
So what did you learn with David Baker? That had to be a huge learning curve for you.
It was because, again, Evanston has a really good program, like a really good music program now. Back when I was there, it really didn't get great until fortunately, like the guy that took over my senior year, the guy by the name of David Fodor, like he saw my desire to really get better, so he helped me prepare for college auditions and everything. And so you're right. So I was when I got to school, like you had guys that had gone to jazz camp and Jamie Aebersold camp and stuff for years and years. So I was kind of like brand new, but David Baker he's got a system that, as far as teaching, he stresses really, like, first of all, delving into the recordings. I'd always listen to them as a fan, but I never really listened to them like, he taught me how to analyze, what a certain player was doing over these chords, and what they may have been implying over these chords, and or what this kind of rhythm is, or where this kind of feel comes from, and how certain people are rooted in some traditions, and certain other players are rooted in other traditions. So he taught me to really look at the music analytically, but also just to, learning songs and learning tunes and doing things orally in the African and African American traditions, like making sure that you get all the book learning, but you just don't forget about the soul and the sound and the interaction of music. So I learned a lot from him and a guy that was my private teacher there, Tom Walsh. Learned a lot from both of them, and just really upped my game. And they just taught me how to solve problems, how to practice, how to really approach problems. These are things that I still use to this day when I'm working on a piece of music or trying to practice something or whatever. The things that I learned there kind of really set me on the path to where I am now.
So you've collaborated with a lot of musicians over the years. You've got the quartet you've had together since '05. You've released 11-plus albums. How do you feel about your career, where you're at and what you're doing?
It's weird. I'm always a couple minds. Part of me has got that Sonny Rollins thing where I'm just like, man, there's so much. I'm my own worst critic. So I'm always, even the album that we just released, I'm super proud of it. It's probably the first album that I can normally if I go to somebody's house and they bought one of our albums, and they'll play it like, hey, that's your album. I'll be like, hey man, turn that off. I've already heard that. But this is probably the first album where I'm just like, I don't mind if somebody plays it. I'm just like, all right, that's not bad. But I'm self-critical of everything. But at the same time, like, I'm very happy with the way things are going. The band sounds great, and I don't mean to say what I'm self-critical about the band. I'm always just self-critical about myself. But I'm very happy with the way the band is sounding. The band is firing on all cylinders. Super happy about the career. Like I'm just in addition to the great guys that I work with in my band, fortunate in that I'm able to collaborate with, top-notch musicians, both, locally here in Chicago and regionally and nationally. I'm just happy to be in a position where people are calling me for various opportunities to play, and I'm just really happy with the way things are going.
You mentioned Coltrane being a big influence on you, but who else in the world of jazz would you consider huge influences for you?
For me, oh man, the list goes on. Sonny Rollins is probably the top of the heap. Just if you're talking about just pure improvising and consciously going out of his way not to repeat himself or get locked in a pattern as far as like when he's playing purely spontaneous, organic improvisation. Coltrane, obviously, Charlie Parker, Hank Mobley, Wayne Shorter, big influence. As far as like conceptually, composition-wise, I'm a huge Monk fan. It's funny. I turned my wife into a Thelonious Monk fan as well. She's not a musician, but I turned her into a fan. Duke Ellington, obviously, Mingus. I've been on a real Lester Young kick. Really just trying to really just kind of address when I'm practicing, addressing the fundamentals of the tenor saxophone. So with be it him or Don Bias or all the people that we admire, the Charlie Parkers of the world. And, I've been trying to figure out who those people like, and they all seem to intersect with the Don Biases and Coleman Hawkins and Lester Young. So I'm kind of addressing those older swing guys practicing lately. Hank Mobley. So as far as those guys, those are my guys.
So let's whittle the list down here. You got the Jazz DeLorean waiting in front of your house. You can hop in, punch in the digits, the coordinates. Where are you going? Who are you going to see?
Oh, wow. Good question. I don't know. Just with the time of the album, I'm such a nut about music. I'd probably go back to the '60s, but I'd go see Coltrane. Then I'd also go check to see where James Brown is playing, I'd go to the '70s, and then I'd want to go check out like Henry Threadgill somewhere, but then I'd check the paper or something to see if Parliament Funkadelic was in town, So that just or in the '80s I'd love to go see Bradford's '80s quartet. But then, I'm a huge Prince fan, so I'd want to go. I'm also, Bradford let out. Let's go see if Prince is playing somewhere, So I'm just a big fan. I like music, being able to play. Or I'm fortunate when I grew up. I grew up as a kid in the '80s, so I listened to all the stuff growing up there. But once I discovered jazz, it's my job to kind of synthesize all the stuff that I listen to and synthesize it and streamline it into something that people will want to listen to. So I'm pretty happy with that.
Right on. Let me ask you this: as a practitioner and a lover of jazz, you've dedicated your life to it. Very simply, why do you love jazz?
It affords me the ability to say things differently every time I'm on a stage. It's a conversation. It's a conversation with my band. It's a conversation with my three good friends. It's a conversation that's different every time. I like the fact that lately I've been liking the fact that jazz for what it tends to be on some instances it tends to be looked at as old people's music for whatever reason. But then I love the fact that you get somebody in the audience who thinks that they're not a jazz fan, and you just hit them in the face with really, really good music. and then like by the end of the concert, somebody that may have been dragged to a concert to see us, by the end of the night is signing our mailing list and has bought all of our CDs. So I like the ability to communicate our view. We communicate our viewpoints about music to people who may know a lot about jazz or who may know nothing about jazz, but hopefully there's something in what we do for everybody, from the novice to the expert, to the person, like I said, to the person that who has convinced themselves that they don't like jazz. I think there's something in what we do for everybody. So it affords, and jazz is just such a big umbrella. It can fit everybody from Monk to Linton to Dave Douglas to George Duke it can fit all these different various viewpoints and still be jazz. There's something that they all have in common. This is just my goal to listen to all this stuff and figure out what they all have in common, and then I can hopefully use it to make myself better and make myself more able to express what it is I'm trying to express.
Let me ask you this. In the future, we look down the line here, we catch up, say, in about 15, 20 years from now, and I ask you what's been going on. Where do you want to see your career go? What do you want to see happen?
What would I like to see happen? I don't know. Obviously, I'd still like to play because that's where my heart is, but, I'd love to, I've put my own stuff out on my own label. I'd love to be in a position where I'm able to produce other records as well and shepherd other talented artists as well. I'd love to write for movies or bring what I do, bring my hybrid musical aesthetic to a video game soundtrack or a movie soundtrack or so, just something. Just I'd like to, just as long as I'm doing something creative, and just in a position where I can be creative and be useful musically, I'll be very happy.
Is there a fan compliment that you've gotten that really sticks out to you, something special that someone has ever said to you about your music or after a show?
There are a couple. There have been a couple. I think the one that always immediately comes to mind, one of my favorite compliments is, because again, we're a pretty eclectic group. We do our own stuff. We'll do kind of oddball versions of standards. We'll bring songs by other artists that are not traditionally jazz songs into the jazz lexicon, be it something by Madonna or Hank Williams or Stevie Wonder, but just something that's not traditionally known as a jazz song. We'll kind of retrofit it and make it a jazz song. So anyway, we're doing all this stuff, and this lady who we're doing this concert downtown at the Chcago Cultural Center, and this lady comes up to us, black lady, got to be about 70, 75 years old, walks up to us, and I'm like, oh boy, here she goes. She's going to tell us that we're terrible or we're ruining the music or something. She walks up to us, and she's like, you know what? You guys are playing this stuff exactly the way I remember it being played, because she's from the era where, I think she lived on the south side of Chicago, so she's from the area where she could walk out of her house and go to a jazz club. So the fact that we reminded her of music that she heard growing up, it meant the world to me, because here's somebody that's been listening to this stuff for a long time. And some people, most people can hear the connection between, the stuff from the 50s and 60s and the stuff that we do. And most people hear it, some people don't. But it really made my heart glad that this lady, who obviously knew her stuff, heard the connection. So that kind of thing, I appreciate that. And then also, like I said, I also appreciate when, you get the compliment, like, you know what, I didn't think I liked jazz until I heard you guys. I always thought it was young people's music, or I thought it was older people's music, but you guys are obviously committed to it and giving this great live performance. So just the fact that we were able to translate all this information to convey it, we were able to convey it to somebody that had never really heard a jazz jazz or probably didn't own a jazz record, she dug it. So I was like, okay. So just being able to communicate what we do is just a good thing.
So everyone has a version of who you are, your family, your friends, your fans, the business people that you work with. But when you wake up and face the world, who do you think you are?
Well, you know what? First person to wake me up is my 5-year-old son, and usually he's telling me to make him breakfast or take him to school. So I would say first person I look in the mirror when I see is usually Daddy, because that's usually the first person. Because my wife's at work, so I've got the day shift with my son. So pretty much Daddy, and then from there, it's just I think it's just hard tenacity. People know me as a very, very tenacious person. I'm passionate about my friends and my family and my bandmates. But they just know that I think my work ethic, what separates me from a lot of my peers is just the work ethic. Always try to be better. Always try to put myself and my band in a better position to effectively do what we do. So I think people know me as or at least when I look at myself in the mirror, I think tenacity.
Right on. That's a great way to sum everything up. Chris, thank you for taking some time out for me today. Thank you for the music. I really appreciate it.
Sounds good. Thank you, Joe. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Chicago, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Chris for his time, his stories, and his music. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com. And for all things Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the music, my friends.
Neon Jazz.